Yes, so I am the chief election official of the county, and what that means is kind of a whole lot, but I do want to say on the front end, Michigan is a unique state in that elections are run primarily at the local level. So it's called decentralized election administration. So the county is primarily responsible for what we think of as the front end of the election, right? So we are responsible for building the ballot, oftentimes collecting candidate filings. There are local clerks that are also responsible for some candidate filings, but for the bulk of the candidate filings, they come to the clerk's office. We're responsible for all campaign finance filings for all candidates in Kalamazoo County. And we're responsible for, like I said, programming the ballot. And what that means is building the actual ballot, working with our certified vendor who will do a lot of the software work and will create the program on our election management software. We are then responsible for getting the actual ballots, the printed ballots, in the hands of the local clerks 45 days before every election. We also are responsible for getting the program, which the program goes into the tabulator, to the local clerks ahead of when they receive the ballots, because they will be responsible for a preliminary test of the accuracy of the program and then a review of the ballot. So right now we're working on programming the ballot. I just got the first proof for the November general election, and so I'm responsible for reviewing all candidate information, candidate names, and also ensuring that precinct has all the right races or contests on that ballot. The county is also responsible for different election administration processes related to early voting. That is something that's brand new. Early voting is now required in the state of Michigan. All voters have the right to 9 days of early in-person voting for each state and federal election. And Kalamazoo County clerks have decided to coordinate an early voting effort that is facilitated by the county. So for early voting, the county is also responsible for identifying and approving early voting venues. The County Election Commission reviews and approves those locations. We're responsible for procuring all supplies and ensuring all equipment are in those venues ahead of time, training election inspectors and recruiting election inspectors for those early voting sites, those 9 days of early voting. And then the county is also responsible for training most election inspectors who work also on election day in our local jurisdictions for nearly all inspectors across the county. We're also responsible for our own preliminary tests of the ballots. All ballots that are used at early voting have to be tested against the equipment. Once you get to the piece of the election that's most exciting, Election Day, the county is responsible for receiving all election materials on election night, which includes those program sticks that I talked about earlier. Those program sticks that were in the tabulator have the results on them. So what happens on Election Day, the polls close at 8 p.m., trained election inspectors shut down the machines and the site. They then deliver that material, including the program, to the local clerk. The local clerk waits for all precincts to close and all materials to arrive before they combine all materials and bring it down to our office. This is sometimes many hours later, right? So on election night, my staff retrieves all information, checks everything in, and then uploads the results of the election as soon as we get it. After Election Day, our office becomes busier again, so that the before election day and after election day are our busiest time during the election season. The Board of County Canvassers meets to review all materials from the election day precincts, from the counting boards, and from the early vote locations, and they review the unofficial results against the materials that the election inspectors documented on election day or in the counting board or early voting site. And from there, they canvass and then they certify the election. And of course, we're responsible for any post-election audits and any recounts that were to happen. For the most part, general responsibilities for a May or special election are similar to those of a primary or general election. However, primary and general elections have a lot more candidates, right? We just finished a primary election that had precinct delegates, so a candidate for every precinct throughout the county. To prepare an election with more candidates, it's a lot more time and energy. One thing that our office is also responsible for is we have to send the ballot proof out to not just the local clerks, but to the candidates as well. So it's a very large mailing that we have to perform before we send that ballot to the printer and then ultimately get it to the clerks. The back end of a special election is also a little different due to the fact that how elections are paid for. A special election is paid for by the jurisdiction or the district that put the question on the ballot. So I've noticed a lot of folks don't realize this, including many school districts. School districts will want to put a proposal on the ballot, not realizing that they're ultimately responsible for the costs of that election. And the county clerk's office, we consolidate all the costs and then issue out billing statements to those jurisdictions or districts. So those are two of the, some differences between preparing for a state, federal election versus a special election. So in Kalamazoo County, I don't think as many voters are aware of their right to vote early. And it makes sense because early voting is relatively new. The first time voters had the opportunity to vote early in Kalamazoo County was February for the presidential primary. So I would want Kalamazoo County voters to know that in November 2022, there was a ballot proposal that passed statewide requiring clerks to provide 9 days of early in-person voting for every state and federal election. In Kalamazoo County, 18 of our 19 local jurisdictions have decided to coordinate early voting efforts. So voters have the opportunity to vote in the November general election beginning in person Saturday, October 26th through November 3rd, Sunday, November 3rd, 9 days to vote early in the November general election, and they can do so at one of 4 locations, WMU Fetzer Center, the Portage Parks and Rec Department, the County Expo Center, and the Douglas Community Association. They can vote early in person, and if they have an absentee ballot, they can also take that absentee ballot with them and tabulate it and see it go through a tabulator. Election inspectors come from all walks of life. They're many ages. They are in our community. They are also very similar in that they pay close attention to detail. Typically, we have many type A election inspectors who want to follow the rules. There's a lot of instructions when it comes to setting up and carrying out the duties in a precinct, and election inspectors take great pride in ensuring all rules are followed and that every voter has the opportunity to vote their ballot, in secrecy. When they're setting up a precinct, they think about where are we putting the voting booths, ensuring that there's a proper path for voters to get through the precinct, ensuring that all voters have access to an accessible voting machine. Election inspectors care most about the voters and ensuring that our democracy is safe. Election inspectors are responsible for carrying out the election at an early vote location or at a precinct on election day or in a absentee counting board. And they're responsible, if they're located at a precinct on election day or an early vote location, they're responsible for opening the precinct, making sure the equipment is set up, everything is in place, ready to go for voters to walk in the door and begin voting. There are multiple stations in a precinct that include reviewing and asking voters to fill out an application to vote. They have to locate a voter in the poll book to ensure that not only they're registered to vote, but they're registered to vote in that location. Election inspectors are then providing a ballot to a voter so they can go to a poll booth to vote. And then there's oftentimes an election inspector directing a voter to an appropriate tabulator where they can tabulate their vote. And then at the end of the day, election inspectors are responsible for shutting down the machines, the tabulators, and ensuring all equipment is accounted for and gets back to the local clerk. Election inspectors are both Democrats and Republicans. We do have some Libertarian and Green Party election inspectors, but all of them are trained. And it's not that they took a training once 10 years ago. No, they all have to be certified and trained every 2 years. And they're sitting through a training that oftentimes is 2 hours plus. They take their jobs very seriously. And in Kalamazoo County, we are fortunate. A lot of our election inspectors have been inspectors for years. They know individuals who come into the precincts. They have learned the changes of the election law to carry out the election. And they also know, they know what to look for, right? And they're helpful to their neighbors and their friends coming in to vote. That is a really good question. I don't think we've actually quantified how many people are involved on election day, but I can share this. We have 19 local clerks, right? 19 local jurisdictions carrying out the election in their jurisdictions. From there, you have to have, the law states, at least 3 trained election inspectors in every single precinct. We have 105 precincts open on election day. So there's well over 300 there. And then you think about some of these precincts, even with early voting, we have 8 election inspectors and a chairperson in running that early vote location. So some of these precincts have way more than just, the minimum 3 inspectors. On top of that, of course, local clerks have their own deputy clerks. They have election specialists and additional staff members. On top of that, there's counting boards, which count and tabulate the absentee ballots. Those counting boards have to have a minimum of 3 as well, but oftentimes we see probably a minimum of 6. You have to have a Democrat and a Republican perform many of the functions in both an election day precinct and an absentee counting board. The county itself, my entire elections team is involved, of course. That would include, 4 of us, which is not much, so we're stretched pretty thin. We also have a deputy sheriff who is with us on election night, well into election night, so the sheriff's office is involved in our elections. In that scope, we also have vendor assistance on election days to ensure if there is any issues or problems that come up with the election equipment itself, we have a vendor there immediately to fix. And then those are the folks who are actually administering the elections and carrying it out. There are thousands of, campaign volunteers, who are also participating maybe as poll challengers, as poll watchers, or campaigning on election day, knocking doors for their particular candidate or proposal. So there are literally thousands of people involved in our elections in Kalamazoo County, I guess.